chainsaws. Have you ever thought about why they even exist? Sure, they cut things, but their real origin story is actually wild. Forget trees and horror movies. Chainsaws were actually invented by doctors for medical procedures. Alright, let's see where it all started. It's the late 1700s and two surgeons, John Aiken and James Jeffrey, are dealing with some pretty tough childbirth situations. Back then, delivering babies wasn't always that smooth, and sometimes the baby's head would get stuck. The doctors needed a way to make it easier and safer for both the mother and the baby. To tackle this issue, the surgeons needed a tool that could make precise, quick cuts, ensuring the safety of both mother and baby. This necessity led to the invention of the chainsaw, not as a lumberjack's tool or a horror movie's prop, but as a medical device for childbirth. Back in the 1780s, the chainsaws were nothing like the big motorized ones we see today. There were no motors, so everything had to be done by hand. The original chainsaw was a manual device that looked pretty scary, like something out of a torture chamber. The chainsaws these two came up with were way smaller, fitting easily in the palm of your hand. Shaped like round or oval kitchen knives, they had these little jagged teeth along the edges. They'd bust out their mini chainsaws to make cutting through bone and cartilage a bit easier. It's wild to think about, but this tool was actually used during childbirth to perform a procedure called symphysiotomy, which helped make more room for the baby to be delivered. During the procedure, the surgeon would whip out a small knife or scalpel and a saw to slice through parts of the pelvic bone or cartilage that were getting in the way of delivering the baby. Also, if things got tricky during childbirth, they didn't hesitate to remove parts of the pelvic bone to aid delivery. Imagine going through that without any anesthesia. It's hard to even imagine the pain. You see, back in the day, our technology wasn't anywhere near as advanced as it is now. We've made huge strides in all sorts of tech areas, but way back then, anesthesia wasn't a thing. So you can imagine how extremely painful it must have been if you needed surgery. They just didn't know how to numb a nerve or give any kind of pain-relieving drugs while surgeons did their thing. And when it came to childbirth, it's not like they'd let someone knock back a few drinks to ease the pain, because that would definitely mess with a baby. But wait, there's more to this. Surgeons soon realized that this tool was way more efficient for cutting flesh and bone than traditional knives. So they didn't just take to childbirth, they started using the chainsaw for other surgeries too, like amputation and various procedures requiring precise cuts. Also, the idea of a doctor wielding a literal chainsaw down there might sound like something out of a horror flick, but thanks to its speed, this device actually helped reduce the pain and trauma of symphysiotomy. It was a go-to tool until the 1890s, when the simpler and more effective Gigli twisted wire saw, invented by Italian obstetrician Leonardo Gigli, took over. However, even with modern instruments, symphysiotomy can have devastating side effects for the mother, like chronic pain, incontinence, and loss of mobility. In 1830s, a German physician and inventor named Bernhard Heine stepped up the game with the osteotome. It was a hand-cranked chain blade device, kinda like what Aiken and Jeffrey came up with, but this one was all about cutting through bone. Before this nifty invention, amputations were done using chisels or hand-operated bone saws, which, to be honest, were slow and not exactly gentle on the patients. The osteotome changed the game. It sliced through bone smoothly and quickly, causing way less trauma. It was a hit in the surgical world, earning Heine the Monthyon Prize from the Académie Française in 1835 and even scoring him an invite from Tsar Nicholas I to show off his invention all around Russia. Heine didn't stop there. He cooked up all sorts of attachments for the osteotome osteotome, such as guards and guides, to protect surrounding tissue during delicate operations. Over time, other smart inventors enhanced the saw by adding electric motors, boosting its effectiveness even further. It's actually crazy to think how a tool like this, originally designed for one purpose, ended up being a game changer in the world of surgery. Now, let's talk about chainsaws used for cutting stuff like wood. It wasn't until the late 19th century that someone had the idea to use the chainsaw for cutting things other than bone and cartilage. One of the earliest patents for what we now know as a chainsaw was given to Frederick L. Maga of Flatlands, New York in 1883. But here's the thing, Maga's invention wasn't quite like the chainsaws we use today. It had a chain stretched between two grooved drums and was meant for stationary use in sawmills, kind of like a modern bandsaw. And 22 years later, in 1905, this guy named Samuel J. Benz from San Francisco snagged the earliest patent for one. Ben's saw, though smaller than Maga's, was still quite the beast. It took two people to handle and was made for the hefty task of bringing down giant redwood trees. But the chainsaws we use now, those portable ones we see all over, well, a Canadian guy named James Shand actually patented those. So James Shand got his patent in 1918, and that set the stage for others to join in on his chainsaw ride. Before you knew it, companies were cranking out those chainsaws we all know today. Around that same time, American inventor Joseph Buford Cox came up with the modern chipper-style chain featuring alternating left and right cutting teeth. He got inspiration from the jaws of the wood-cutting timberman beetle larva. This Oregon chain would later become the standard in pretty much every chainsaw design from then on. For a long time, the advancement of a genuinely portable engine-driven chainsaw was slowed down by limitations in materials and engine technology. The earliest portable ones were electric and had to be hooked up to a separate generator. It wasn't until after World War II that advancements in aluminum casting and engine design finally made gas-powered chainsaws possible. One of the first ones to hit the scene was the 1959 Husqvarna Model 90, and the rest is history. Now, coming back to our topic, it's not a surprise that symphysiotomies aren't really a thing these days, given the leaps we've made in medical tech. Plus, there's a rise of C-sections where they make incisions in the abdomen and uterus to bring out the baby. That said, there's a belief that symphysiotomies still happen in some less fortunate countries where C-sections might not be readily available. Advancements in anesthesia and antiseptic surgery in the late 19th and early 20th centuries were a game changer for C-sections, thank goodness, making symphysiotomies pretty much a thing of the past. After the 1930s, this procedure wasn't done anymore in developed countries. Well, almost. Unfortunately, between 1944 and 1987, about 1,500 women in the Republic of Ireland had to endure symphysiotomies during childbirth. The procedure often happened without the patients knowing or agreeing to it, and that caused serious issues. In a 2014 interview with The Guardian, one woman shared her experience from 1981. She got gas and an injection, then was taken to another room where her legs were tied up while nurses and a doctor performed the procedure. She talked about the pain and how it's affected her life, including arthritis and mobility problems. It's a tough situation made worse by the fact that the reasons for doing it weren't medical but religious. Back then, there was the idea that having more than 3 C-sections was risky, so they pushed sterilization or contraception instead. It wasn't until the 1990s that people really started to understand the full extent of what had happened, and it wasn't until 2014 that the United Nations Human Rights Committee called on the Irish government to look into it. Later that same year, about 300 women who had been through those non-consensual procedures finally got some compensation. But you know, the effects of all that are still felt today. But don't worry, symphysiotomies are now like a thing of the past, and honestly, that's probably for the best. At the end of the day, let's all just agree that chainsaws claws are fantastic tools for cutting through stuff, but when it comes to using them on humans, yeah, maybe let's leave that in the past where it belongs. And that wraps it up. Now, what do you think? Do drop your thoughts in the comment section below. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like this video for more content like this. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our latest uploads. Also, make sure to share this video with your friends. Until next time, stay curious and we will be right back with another one.